All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from RicoScores, and this is fairly breaking news right here, man. Apparently, the Washington Commanders are interested in potentially bringing in Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator. Remember, he had the most explosive offense in 2013. We got to talk about why he was successful and also why he failed as a head coach. Also, does hiring Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator make Jayden Daniels an even more likely pick second overall? I already thought that we were starting to sway more towards a Jayden Daniels. He make more sense second overall than a Drake May, especially if Caleb Williams goes first overall. But now with Chip Kelly involved, does that make Jayden Daniels even more likely with him being a super dual threat quarterback that loves to run the ball? He ran for over 1,000 yards and had 10 rushing touchdowns last year for LSU. So, hey, man, let's talk about it. Also, again, where did Chip Kelly go wrong, especially with the Eagles, but also with the 49ers, the one season he was with them? Also, is Chip Kelly a better offensive coordinator than he is head coach? Is he the type of guy that shouldn't be allowed to make any personnel decisions? Just come here and coach this offense, get these points going, and that's it. Or his offense is also too fast-paced. That's a concern as well. Too many snaps per game and things like that. Tires out the offense, defense on the field too long. Also, would a guy like Jayden Daniels, if we were to draft him as a quarterback, basically be an automatic lock and a favorite to win Offensive Rookie of the Year if we bring in Chip Kelly as our offensive coordinator to pair with him? Let me know of all. And then, of course, do we prefer Chip Kelly over a Clint Kubiak or even an Eric Bieniemy? Before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. Again, I can't wait to get to draft and free agency. I know I keep saying it, but until we can get through with fully building this staff all the way out, I'm gonna have to keep working on these videos because we're already hearing about who our defensive coordinator may be, so I need to go ahead and work on that video next. So we're getting to the draft and free agency stuff, but we got to get this personnel and coaching staff, front office stuff out the way first. I'm trying to keep y'all updated on every and any little thing that the Commanders have going on, even if it's just a rumor or a report and not an actual fact yet. So make sure y'all stay tuned. Again, I can't wait to get to the draft stuff, mock drafts, all of that on the way, film sessions for channel members only. Stay tuned for all of that. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get to this video right here. Let's get it. All right, so Jeremy Fowler tweeted, UCLA head coach Chip Kelly is a potential candidate for Commanders offensive coordinator position under new head coach Dan Quinn per sources. And I don't remember them ever crossing paths, so that's really interesting. But Kelly, a two-time NFL head coach, is believed to have interest in returning to the league, and Washington will consider talking with him. Is he a favorite? We're not saying that at all yet. Is he the most likely candidate to be hired? We're not saying that at all yet. We're here, as in Rico of RicoScores, to break down why this would not be a good idea and why this could potentially be a good idea. I'm not here to report that Chip Kelly is the most likely candidate and whether or not I necessarily prefer him as a candidate. We're just going to take a look at the good and bad, weaknesses and strengths, like we do with most things. Also, Chip Kelly has apparently been interviewed at least twice for the Raiders offensive coordinator job, so it's quite likely that he ends up going there anyway, and all of this is pointless. But if he doesn't get hired there and we may potentially hire him, of course, we got to dive into this whole thing. So let's go ahead and get this out the way. Chip Kelly as a head coach? Hell no. Please no. But as an offensive coordinator, that may be a little interesting there. Maybe not my first choice. I'm leaning more to like a Clint Kubiak and for him to bring his brother as the QB's coach, because look what they did with that last pick of the draft, Brock Purdy. Now imagine what they could do with a top 3 draft quarterback second overall. Looking at what they did with last pick of the draft, Brock Purdy. But at the same time, Chip Kelly is very interesting. And now I'm seeing that actually Chip Kelly was an offensive coordinator candidate for the Atlanta Falcons back when Dan Quinn was the head coach there in 2017. So maybe there's a little bit of a relationship right there that's already slightly built with interviews and things like that. Maybe they're already familiar with each other, and that's why Dan Quinn could potentially look to bring Chip Kelly back up. I feel like if anything, if we don't hire a Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator, that's more so because we didn't want him than he didn't want us, because apparently he does want to make a comeback in the NFL from everything I'm seeing right now, and he'd be willing to take our job. The question is, do we want him? which is what takes us to the good and the bad. Well, let's first of all talk about how Chip Kelly managed to turn the previous year's 4-12 Eagles into a 10-6 record, both 2013 and 2014 respectively, while also winning the NFC East Division Championship in his first year, which is incredible. I mean, again, I know a lot of people aren't excited about Dan Quinn, but he got the Falcons from bad to Super Bowl within 2 years. Now, granted, 28-3 failure is incredible. That's scary. But to go from terrible, not even making the playoffs, to in the Super Bowl within 2 years is pretty phenomenal, and that's very noteworthy. I mean, if I were to tell you that the Commanders would go from winning 4 games to in a Super Bowl within 2 years, but I didn't tell you who our head coach or offensive coordinator would be, you'd be like, sign me up. And then if I were to tell you that that's Dan Quinn and that's something he's already done, then, you know, that changes things. That's the different perspective on it. And the same thing, Chip Kelly was able to get to win the NFC East Division Championship game within his first year. He took them from 4-12 to winning the NFC East Division Championship game. I think that's very noteworthy. So if we're talking about coming in and taking a bad team and getting a spark out of them immediately, Dan Quinn and Chip Kelly are probably your top 2 candidates there. Now, the problem is sustained success when it comes to Dan Quinn and Chip Kelly and being dependent upon a lot of different factors going right around them. We're going to dive into that. But again, when you're talking about getting a spark out of a bad team and making them into contenders immediately, Dan Quinn as a head coach and Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator, slash head coach, what he did for the Eagles, are some actually pretty interesting candidates. He was also rewarded the 2013 Maxwell Club Coach of the Year back in 2013. And in the midst of his first losing season as a head coach and before the end of his third season as an NFL head coach, Kelly was fired by the Eagles. And then he went to the 49ers for the 2016 season as their new head coach, and they went 2-14. Absolutely terrible. I mean, Adam Peters had to work magic to get that 2-14 San Francisco 49ers to what we know as the Super Bowl contenders right now, literally in the Super Bowl, going against the Chiefs, may win a Super Bowl. So Adam Peters seems to be the fix that can help all of these bad situations going on. Like if Chip Kelly is the ruiner, Adam Peters is the fixer. And if Adam Peters would be the GM for a Chip Kelly coached offense, maybe Adam Peters could get the best out of Chip Kelly. We would get only the good and none of the bad. And you can definitely say that his offense back then, 2013, 2014, was the epitome of speed and scoring and style. They were fun to watch. At a certain point, he took the NFL by storm, but then it just went downhill ever since. I mean, it was just getting worse and worse and worse, man. You could argue that Kelly may have been over his head and started to make significant moves with the organization at a certain point. Him, the head coach, was getting in the way of him as the offensive coordinator because he traded Nick Foles, brought in Sam Bradford, and then the move that had everybody super perplexed was trading LaShawn McCoy for Kiko Alonso. That was what started the beef with LaShawn McCoy and all of that, and players starting to turn on him and things like that. All of Kelly's moves ended up backfiring, and the Eagles regressed to a 6-9 record. Feeling the pressure from the Philadelphia fan base, Lurie ended up firing Chip Kelly. And Kelly wasn't a coach and free agent for long, though. He went to the San Francisco 49ers and, again, had a disastrous 2-14 season. So this is the point to prove that Chip Kelly, the head coach, the personnel decision maker, deciding who is on the team and who's not, gets in the way of Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator. He was never a bad offensive coordinator, but as a head coach, he was terrible. So basically what I take from this is don't let him control anything but the offense and just strictly the X's and O's on the offense. No personnel decisions. Maybe he can have a say in personnel, like who we draft, who we bring in free agency to maximize the potential of his offense that he wants to implement potentially for the Commanders. But that's it. You just go and coach up these points. You don't decide who we trade, nothing. We saw how that went for both the Eagles and the 49ers. But at a certain point, man, that guy was averaging 142 yards rushing per game his first 2 seasons as the Eagles head coach. That's phenomenal, man. I mean, the way that he uses running backs, it's a very running back friendly system. Running backs will love him because in 2013, the Eagles ran the ball 500 times to the 508 times that they passed it. I mean, that is a ridiculous amount of balance that you just don't see in the NFL ever. And LaShawn McCoy, even though they ended up having beef because Chip Kelly traded him away, In 2013, he became the first Eagles player to win an NFL rushing title since Steve Van Buren did it in 1949. McCoy rushed for 1,607 yards on 314 carries and 9 rushing touchdowns. He also led the league in yards from scrimmage by adding 539 receiving yards on 52 catches. Not bad for a guy who missed 4 games the season before and had never rushed for more than 1,309 yards in a season, and had 2 years in which he didn't even break 1,000 rushing yards before Chip Kelly got there. Chip Kelly maximizes offense. He definitely maximizes running backs, but even quarterback wise, even though it didn't end well in Philly, his offense was still productive at producing offenses, ranked 2nd, 5th, and 12th in the NFL in total offense for 3 years with the Eagles. And the passer ratings for quarterbacks during that time under Chip Kelly compared to the rest of the NFL careers is very noteworthy, because Nick Foles, while playing for Chip Kelly, had 105 passer rating. Rest of his career, 76.2. Mark Sanchez, playing for Chip Kelly, 86.6. Rest of his career, 71.2. And us burgundy and gold fans know about Mark Sanchez outside of Chip Kelly. Sam Bradford, playing for Chip Kelly, 86.4 passer rating. Rest of his career, 84.1. Not that big of a difference, because Sam Bradford just ended up not being very good. And Michael Vick, even as great as he was for the Falcons, overall, his passer rating was better under Chip Kelly than the rest of his career. Chip Kelly, 86.4. Rest of his career, 80.32. So this guy maximizes running backs and quarterbacks. This guy has an explosive offense. Again, I want to reiterate that Chip Kelly, the head coach, was getting in the way of Chip Kelly, the offensive coordinator. And if anybody knows how scary his offenses can be, it would be us burgundy and gold fans. We were Chip Kelly victims for a while, man. Those 2 seasons where they were killing it, boy, we were definitely some victims there, and we hated them. It was not fun, man. He had the Eagles offense doing whatever they wanted against us. And hopefully if we hire him as an offensive coordinator, he can get that same revenge back on the Eagles, who ended up firing him with good reason. But yeah, I mean, he would still probably be looking for some good payback, which would be really fun, because Dan Quinn would be getting payback against the Dallas Cowboys 2 times a year. Chip Kelly would be getting revenge against the Eagles 2 times a year. And both of those guys were Giants killers. I mean, Dan Quinn, as a defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, had the Giants in a box most of the time that he was the Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. And Chip Kelly, as a head coach / offensive mind, was giving the Giants hell in his time with the Eagles. So we would form the anti-NFC East coaching staff, which would be pretty fun, man. I'm not gonna lie. Now, shouts out to this Eagles fan from a few years ago on Reddit. Did a great job breaking down exactly how Chip Kelly likes to run his offenses. First point, he gets personnel that are good at multiple different things so they can be used in various packages. Good blocking tight ends that can also receive, good receiving running backs, and wide receivers that can block. That his offense demands those things. You got to be multiple. Also, he gets to the line fast. Also, he has to have a quarterback capable of making quick decisions on defensive positioning and numbers of guys in the box. So based on what they're seeing pre-snap, Chip Kelly will have a wide receiver motion pre-snap to see, okay, is this zone, is this man coverage, is somebody potentially blitzing, and then the quarterback from that pre-snap read has to be able to make quick decisions there. Also, he has a lot of non-verbal communication from the sideline for different positions between plays. Like the receivers are looking at one thing, the tight ends are looking at another, and this all just has to work together to form one positive play. Also, he spreads the defense out to create more space, so receivers are open, all of that type of stuff. And again, with his fast pace getting to the line very quickly, defenses that he goes against are typically very worn out by the time we get to like the 4th quarter, maybe even before then. Defenses are worn out, tired, and those guys don't play to the best of their ability. And this Eagles fan Reddit user finishes it with the conclusion that the faster you run, the more plays you get in, the higher numbers you'll see on the stat sheet. You'll notice the Eagles have higher production, but time of possession is also super low almost every game. So you notice the downside of the Chip Kelly offense is that they score so fast. They either don't score fast or score fast, and they're in no huddle. I mean, yeah, that's great and all. It tires out the opposing defense, but it also tires out your defense being on the field all of the time because they're very fast. Whether they score or not, they're in and out quickly. Even though they run the ball a lot, they're still in and out very quickly. They don't have a really high time of possession, which strains your own defense. So that's the positive and negative of a Chip Kelly. But at the same time, his 2013 Eagles offense was third in offensive DVOA. And again, to improve from 4-12 to 10-6 within one season, you only had one season to install an entirely new offense, and to get that much production is very interesting. And they pushed the tempo as far as you can in the NFL. They averaged one snap every 23.9 seconds in 2013, and then one every 22.2 seconds in 2014, which were both number one in the league each respective year. They scored 30 plus points in 8 games, and they lost in the playoffs only via a last second field goal in the 2 years that Chip Kelly was actually balling out for the Eagles. So maybe at a certain point, you can say that people figured out what some people would call his gimmick of an offense, and his priority as an offensive coordinator coming to the Commanders potentially will be to figure out how people counter them back. So basically, Chip Kelly brought fire to the Eagles with them. After a couple of years, defense has learned how to bring water to counter that fire, and now Chip Kelly has to bring lightning to counter that water. Basically, the best way to break it down in a nerdy way. Hopefully that helps some people understand a little bit better. Now, in conclusion, I think this could actually really work. I mean, again, Adam Peters and Eugene Shin on the personnel decisions, completely running how we run this team, who we bring in, trades, draft, all of that type of stuff, with a little bit of input, of course, from Dan Quinn and Chip Kelly potentially. And then speaking of Dan Quinn, him with potentially Joe Witt Jr. running the defense, everything on the defense. They run defense. Chip Kelly only controls the offense. We could be cooking something up here. I'm not going to lie. This could be exciting. And again, like I mentioned earlier, it sounds like if Chip Kelly were to become our offensive coordinator, Jayden Daniels to Washington would be far more likely. I mean, that I wouldn't say it's a lock, but I think it would definitely be more likely. I already thought that Drake May and Jayden Daniels, between those two, we were more likely to lean towards a Jayden Daniels anyway. But now with Chip Kelly as an offensive coordinator, I don't even think it's necessarily even close. I think Jayden Daniels would just shoot. I think it would be automatic. Everybody would start mocking Caleb Williams 1, Jayden Daniels number 2 overall. But Chip Kelly will definitely want to run a high-powered offense with a super mobile quarterback and a big arm quarterback. And Chip Kelly's offense would be easier for a Jayden Daniels to learn going into the NFL, more so than like a traditional pro-style offense. So you can expect a guy like Jayden Daniels to come in with a high floor immediately and be able to win games sooner because of a college-friendly offense like a Chip Kelly. And again, I think he would not necessarily be a lock, but a big favorite to an offensive rookie of the year if he would have come in and Chip Kelly is his offensive coordinator. Even though Shane Waldron potentially with Caleb Williams would give him a great run for his money, but if we're talking pure stats and numbers, Chip Kelly with Jayden Daniels would be scary. I don't know how much it would necessarily lead to wins for us, but statistically, fantasy football wise, boy, that would be scary, man. And I know NFC East defenses would be waking up in cold sweats, having nightmares about that combination. So now that I'm really thinking about it and doing a deep dive into it, I'm actually starting to get pretty excited about that potential experiment, because the safe people's person, leaders type of guy, head coach hiring Dan Quinn, that was the safe thing. That was the when in doubt, you know what you're gonna get. But we're gonna come with an elite defense, I believe, under that. But at the same time, an offensive coordinator that is the personification of explosive offenses, I think that takes that safe hire in Dan Quinn and turns it into a fun, risky hire that I was more so leaning towards if you bring in a Chip Kelly. Because Dan Quinn, one thing about him, again, being safe is not the most exciting. There's a certain floor to that. Chip Kelly brings the ceiling. Dan Quinn brings the floor. Chip Kelly brings the ceiling, but he's also more risky. Again, Dan Quinn is safe. Chip Kelly is a very risky. I think that would be a really fun experiment. I would love to see how that goes. And again, I would trust whatever decision they end up making, because I trust Adam Peters and Josh Harris and Eugene Shin. I feel like they've done so many things right so far that we have just no choice but at the very least to give them the benefit of the doubt early on. Judge them in December. Don't judge them yet in May. Yeah, question them. Again, like I said in my Dan Quinn video, we have every right to question their decisions, but don't doubt them. Don't let hiring Dan Quinn as head coach and potentially Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator stop you from watching the games or going to the games like you originally would have if we ended up with a Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, or Mike McDonald. Please don't let it do that. And also, shouts out to my boys over at Ref the District. They went ahead and put a survey up on Twitter, and they asked people, Commanders offensive coordinator vibe check. Who do you prefer, Chip Kelly, Eric Bieniemy? And so far, out of 100 votes, 56.6% prefer Chip Kelly. So it's not a big difference, but so far people are leaning more so towards Chip Kelly over Eric Bieniemy, which is very interesting. Which takes me to my last point. That is the end of this video. Make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. My last point, I want to know, especially in the comment section, how do y'all feel about Chip Kelly, especially compared to Eric Bieniemy? If you had to choose between Eric Bieniemy and Chip Kelly, who would you pick? Of course, Clint Kubiak seems to be the most logical decision right now from most people that I'm seeing. Again, especially with his work with Brock Purdy and how explosive that 49ers offense is right now. A lot of people give him credit for a lot of that. But if it's between Chip Kelly and Eric Bieniemy, don't include Clint Kubiak. If you had to choose between those two, who would you pick? Let me know in the comment section. Again, I'm going to try my best to try to read and reply to as many comments as possible. But again, as you can see, I'm already busy. I'm working on a video right now for Joe Witt Jr. as our potential defensive coordinator to follow Dan Quinn to the Commanders and get a promotion to become our defensive coordinator, all of that type of stuff. The Cowboys clearly wanted to keep him and make him their defensive coordinator. So this is us potentially stealing a guy from the Cowboys that the Cowboys really wanted, which is always a great thing. So I'm working on that video now. So I'm going to try my best to try to read and reply to as many comments as possible, but there's already a lot of comments under the Dan Quinn video, so I got to catch up to those. But I'm really interested in seeing y'all answers between Chip Kelly or Eric Bieniemy, so stay tuned. I appreciate y'all. Be patient with me, man. I really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.